Good morning. How you doing? It's Thursday morning. It's the 24th of October 2019. And if it's the 24th of October 2019, it means that 1 week from today at 11 o'clock at night, the UK is supposed to leave the European Union. But of course that's not going to happen. The rain has returned to Manchester. It's it's drizzly. Light drizzle, which is the default weather system for Greater Manchester. You can guarantee pretty much most of the time that you pop your head out the front door there and have a look, or pop your head out the window, you'll see that it's a light drizzle. I'm not feeling too bad. This throat infection I have, got a bit of a nasty sore throat, you know, when you swallow and you feel like you're swallowing broken glass. I've got a bit of that. Previously, in previous years, that would have rendered me unable to speak above a whisper. But for some reason this year, it hasn't done that, which is good. I can just about speak without whispering. I can speak just about. There you are. Good morning to those of you who are watching this live and are commenting on the chat there. It's good to be with you. Thanks for looking at it. Just to reiterate, this live stream is where you and I take a skeptical and sometimes humorous look at the UK newspapers. It's a newspaper review programme. It's got nothing to do with the Richie Allen radio show. It's just a little bit of fun. Extra work. Sometimes a lot of extra work, but plenty of fun, I think. So jump into the papers then, and I'll go to the chat in a few minutes' time. The newspapers, as you would expect today, are concentrating heavily on the lorry that was discovered yesterday morning in Essex with 39 misfortunate people dead in the back of it, believed now to have frozen to death. So there is a lot of focus on that story this morning, as you would imagine. And the various television and news programmes are also spending a lot of time focusing on that particular issue this morning as well. So we'll start with the Guardian newspaper then. Police work to identify 39 people found dead in lorry. And a lot of pictures of the forensic teams going about their business, trying to gather information about the people on board the lorry. There's a man in custody, of course. He's been named and he's been arrested on suspicion of murder. That's an interesting thing. I don't imagine the lorry driver, the 25-year-old man, I don't imagine he had any intention to murder or to kill anybody. What has happened? Well, it might take some time to figure it out. Let's see there. What a strange set of circumstances. I see what's happened. Right, that was the Guardian. Let's go to the Telegraph newspaper. Same again. Human cargo driven to frozen fate. Picture again. I've used that picture myself this morning. Also on the front page of the Telegraph is a story about an alleged split in Boris Johnson's cabinet about whether or not an election should be attempted, because Johnson can't just call an election. He must get 2/3 of Parliament to vote with him, and allegations abound this morning excuse me, that his own cabinet is split on whether they should concentrate on trying to get his Brexit deal through Parliament or whether he should go for an election. You see, the problem with the Brexit deal is, as it would progress through Parliament, it would be amended by opponents of Brexit, which is the vast majority of Parliament. They would tack on amendments to the deal, things like we must stay in a customs union with the European Union, which of course means not leaving the European Union, which means that freedom of movement would continue and all the rest of it. So a lot of talk about that today as well. So it is the lorry, the tragedy of those who died on board that lorry and the implications of it. But as I said, a bit of Brexit talk as well in the papers. 39 dead in his truck is the story on the front page of the Sun. Kind of dangerous stuff, this. I'm a proponent of free speech, of course, but this is dangerous. They've identified the man who was driving the truck. There he is, and he has been spoken of quite a lot. You wonder about the possibility in the near future of this guy getting if he ends up in court, that is, if he could possibly get a fair trial. A lot of issues around the reporting of stuff like this. I won't dwell on it today, but there you are. A lot of speculation about the journey of the truck, Zeebrugge, and loose border patrol security and what's going on. But of course the main issues around this and why people are finding themselves leaving the Middle East and leaving sub-Saharan Africa and elsewhere to try and make it to Europe and to the UK. These issues being pretty much ignored today. The Times, lorry migrants froze to death. Yeah, and Johnson poised for election call as EU wrangles over extension. The European Union is not wrangling over any extension. It's not wrangling. The European Union is only too happy to agree to an extension because the European Union doesn't want and will ensure that the UK never leaves. So it's not wrangling over anything. Let's have a look at the Mail then. Why were warnings ignored? Crime chiefs told of people smuggling risk at Essex port 3 years ago. Now tragedy sees 39 dead in lorry 1 mile from the dock. That's in the Daily Mail today. On social media, of course, the alt/far right talking about migration in the way that the right does approach migration, and leftists then talking about it in the way they do. So it's all very polarised, I suppose. It's all very predictable, really, how this has been discussed. That's the Daily Mirror there, self-explanatory. No need really to get too deep into that. The Metro promised a better life. Let's just quickly go down the rest of these because there isn't much of a difference, really. Dream of a new life ends in horror. iPaper. And the Express then, fury over EU still deciding our fate. Also the truck horror. That headline is in reference to something Boris Johnson said to Jeremy Corbyn at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday, that basically the opposition to Brexit MPs, they have now basically engineered a situation where the European Union gets to decide what happens next. And that's in the Express, or on the Express. Financial Times then, SoftBank to force 4,000 WeWork job cuts as part of a turnaround plan. Financial story, and also a story about Brexit. Nothing on the front of the Financial Times about the lorry. And finally, the Star newspaper, something completely different. It's a story about the BBC television show Strictly Come Dancing. Apparently, those participants, or those who are participating in it, have come down with a deadly bug. It seems like everybody's got the lurgy, the dreaded cold, the head cold, which I've got myself. But sure, I'm not complaining, am I? Good morning to Joe, to Martin, to Maxine, to Luxmia, to John Rorty. Good morning, John. To Jessica, to Julie. How you doing, Julie? To John Grammaticus. Wendy, to Maggie May, to Una Monroe, to Dan, to Gina, to Chris, to Anne Gladman. Good morning. Sean, to Why Wish, to Dean Thornby. How you doing, Dean? To Chris Widener. How you doing, Chris? Nice to have you on board this morning. To John Garrett, to MCH, Megatree Rat, Pierre. Good morning, Pierre. To Paul Wright. How you doing, Paul? I had to unhide your comment, Paul, which was about a homeopathic remedy. I don't know why I would have to do that. Maxine loves this live stream. You live a sheltered life, Maxine. Apparently because Maxine doesn't get to hear the radio show live. Thank you, Maxine. Mr. Roper, good morning. Menapia man says, you look like a Benedictine monk, Richie. This is my Salford hoodie. Where is it? There it is. S for Salford. I got that from my mate Tez, the oft-mentioned. Good morning to Liz, to Mike Rocock, how you doing, Mike? In Rory McIlroy country, County Down. Sutty's Rehab, how you doing? Sutty's Rehab, sadly, says that he got sacked from work for telling the boss to go fuck himself. Sutty's Rehab doesn't employ the count to 10 rule then before saying what it is you want to say. Some people are too sensitive, he says. I'm sorry to hear that, pal. Hi to Manzi, to Acker, Furnage, to John. Good morning, Jean-Anne Crowley, who says, I don't think the driver was remotely involved. Yeah, that would make sense to me too. That would make sense to me too. Holding the driver on suspicion of murder. Buying time, really, on the part of the police, I don't know. But it's ridiculous, I think, to imagine that the driver, even if the driver knew about the cargo, that he was intent on murdering them. It's also very strange about them freezing to death. If they did freeze to death, if they did, that would tell me that the driver hadn't a Scooby-Doo about what was going on, and that these people were spirited on board his lorry at a time when maybe he wasn't in charge of said lorry and said trailer. I don't know. It's a dreadful thing. But like I said, of course, what is the mainstream media at its most basic? It's a gatekeeper. It's a gatekeeping thing. It's a gatekeeping collection of organisations that work to obscure from our field of vision, to obscure the truth about what's happening. You know, we could spend all day, you and I, talking about Syria and the Turks' attempt to take on the Kurds and the Syrian government standing alongside the Kurds and Donald Trump and the US government's part in that. We could talk all day about that. We could talk about the agreement brokered between Russia and Turkey, which has seen Russia now taking responsibility for that part of Syria. We could be here all day long talking about these things and what's really going on, because I think, at the risk of sounding arrogant, we know what's going on and who's behind it and why. These are symptoms of a global agenda. The mass migration, the mass movement of people is a symptom of a deliberate global agenda. And people are like pawns. The hapless, God-forsaken people, God love them, fleeing the carnage of their regions. And of course, the countries they arrive in, the people in those countries, while seemingly having a better life, seemingly it's better to be living in Europe and in Germany and in Poland and in Spain and in Greece and in Ireland and in England. Yes, it does seem to be better than the existence that those people fleeing the Middle East have. But of course, we're all under the same jackboot. So the arrival of people causes catastrophic problems for public services. We know this. We're well aware of it. But people dying in the back of lorries, this is sheer fuckery. It's beyond inhuman. But we won't ever get any discussion on television or radio today about why it's really going on. What gave breath, what gave oxygen to lunatic fucking head choppers in the Middle East who can make fucking Panavision, Scorsese production standard epic videos of mass slaughter and put them on the internet? Where did they come from? Where did they? What gave rise to them? There's no discussion of that. They're still referring to Syria on national television news as the Syrian conflict or the Syrian civil war. So that's pathological fucking bullshit, that. Yes, not patent bullshit, pathological bullshit. Because the presenters themselves know that Syria is not in a state of civil war. The presenters themselves know that the Syrian conflict is at best disingenuous, but at worst it is a monstrous lie. Syria was turned into a lunatic asylum by the intelligence agencies of Western democracies. It's a fact. It's not conjecture. And these poor bastards, what else are they going to do? Only run for the fucking hills. To countries that don't want them. To people that don't want them. Why do the people not want them? Because the vast majority of people in the UK, they haven't a clue as to what is really happening in the Middle East. They have no idea. And I don't blame them for having no idea. They haven't a clue. Anyway. The Smiths, the much loved Smiths, Morrissey Marr, of course, the Morrissey Marr partnership. We never mention Andy Rourke and Mike Joyce. I don't know why we do. We don't, but Morrissey and Marr. Great song called Stop Me If You Think That You've Heard This One Before. Stop me, oh, 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 stop me. Stop me if you think that you've heard this one before. I've been saying it for years. People have no idea what's happened in Syria. Syria was doing fine, thank you very much. So yeah, it's a dreadful thing. Let's have a look at some of the newspaper stories, some of the stories inside the newspapers. A lot of interesting things in the Times lately and in the Daily Mail. Here's an interesting story in the Times. If you listen to the Richie Allen radio show last night, or if you listen to it regularly, you will sometimes hear an academic from the northeast, but he works in Scotland, called Stuart Wayton. He was on the programme last night. He's a very, very interesting man, a very interesting thinker. Here's an interesting thing. We're being told all the time how racist we are and how hateful we are. You know, how racist the society is, how anti-Semitic it is, how homophobic we are, how intolerant we are. But it's a load of bollocks, because the truth is far, far different. And it's very, very interesting that Greg Hurst, writing in the Times today, almost echoes word for word what Stuart Wayton said to me on the radio show last night. Liberal attitudes are on the rise, and they have been for a long time. What is liberalism? Well, you can make your own definition of it. I don't want to get into identity politics, but these aren't bad things. This is not bad news. You know, people are not bothered anymore by homosexual relationships. They are not bothered by gay marriage. They are not bothered by nudity on television. They're not bothered by people using cannabis. They're not. There isn't a epidemic of racism in society, even though we're being told all the time that there is. And of course, the reason we're being told all the time that there is not because the establishment is really concerned about minority groups or minority cultures. They pretend they are, but they're not. It's about really imposing a new and previously unimagined form of censorship on society. That's what it's really about. But really, it's about insidious self-censorship. Okay, telling you, or programming you, speaking to your subconscious to get you to self-censor, to not ever speak about that which you really believe or really think. There isn't any great racism in society. It's a good article in the Times today. And if you heard Stuart Wayton on the radio show last night, good. If you didn't, I would recommend you listen to it, particularly if you come from a minority group, whether that be an ethnic minority group or a religious minority group. Have a listen and park your ego at the door. Just listen to what the man is saying. He's very interesting. Also in the Times today, we'll stay with the Times for a minute. Jet-setting stars exposed over hypocrisy on climate change. This is a good piece. Many of those supporters of previously supporting Al Gore and people like that, now on the Greta Thunberg bandwagon. They're in the air most of the time, apparently. And their carbon footprint is massive, apparently. But we know this. People like Emma Watson, they've mentioned Emma Watson, and others. Bill Gates, of course, gets a mention as well. Yeah. That's in the Times. Should we stay with the Times? No, we'll come back to the Times in a minute. Let's go to... Yeah, this is interesting in the Mail. Very interesting. Brexiteers accuse Google of anti-Brexit bias. MPs blast WebJoin for taking a view on politics. Analysis of 5,000 search terms shows that when those terms are searched for, Google is directing people to pro-Remain sites like the BBC, The Guardian and The Independent. That won't be anomalous. That will not be anomalous. That will be deliberate. No doubt about it. That's an interesting study. And it's in the Mail today. It's a well-written piece in the Mail today. Ed Riley there. Have a look. Okay. Analysis of the first page of Google searches for 5,000 Brexit-related keywords and phrases shows The Guardian, The Beeb and The Independent show up most prominently in the results, which between them receive half of the market share. All right? Okay. There's even a graph, if you want to see it there. That's wholly unsurprising to you and me. The media has played its part since June 2016 in chipping away at the result of the referendum, is doing its best to send people to... Well, I mean, we've seen it on Question Time, which is the BBC's big panel debate show, which is Thursday evenings at 10:40 or thereabouts on BBC One, these days hosted by Fiona Bruce. Analysis of the programme's guests post-2016 shows that Remain members of the panel outweigh Brexiteer members of the panel by 2-1. So out of every 3, 2 of them favour remaining in the European Union. Again, that's not just coincidental. It's not anomalous. It is deliberate. But I'm not going to spend any time crying about it. It is what it is. The BBC is what the BBC is. It's one of the reasons I don't have a television licence. I never will have. That's the BBC there. On that type of story, on that subject, I should say, about bias, didn't Mark Zuckerberg appear before a congressional committee yesterday, didn't he? Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook impresario, head honcho, if you want to believe that. And apparently he was questioned very sternly by the Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who had questions for him about the far right and Cambridge Analytica, asking him about when he knew that Facebook users' data was being given to Cambridge Analytica and other organisations on the right. So it was an interesting exchange. We might get into it a bit later on in the programme. Whatever you might think of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, some interesting things came out of that meeting. Questions about when Facebook should take down something that is deemed or has been claimed as fake news or as incorrect or as without any merit. See, this is a very big issue that's going forward. Very big story going forward, isn't it? Facebook, eh? When should Facebook step in and delete a post from anybody because the post is inaccurate, is without substance, or is flagrantly lying? So who gets to decide that? Who gets to decide, will it be a man? Will it be a woman? Who will that man or woman be? Or will it be artificial intelligence that gets to determine what is and what isn't true? So it's a big issue, this. And that's in The Guardian today. That's one that's going to run, you know, because Facebook, of course, reaches more people than Sky News, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, RTE, right? Reuters, right? AFP, right? I could name another 1,000 media organisations. Facebook makes them look like a little group of ants scurrying around, right? It's absolutely a behemoth. And it is now responsible for determining, Facebook, what people does and what people do see and what people do not see. Its users. And that sort of power is, again, it would have been unimaginable back in the day. No such thing as plurality. There can never be plurality ever again. Even if anybody was determined to reframe the media, to find ways to encourage more and more and more media organisations, more and more independent media organisations. Well, it wouldn't matter anymore, not with the size of Facebook, the size of Twitter and the size of Instagram, and of course Google and YouTube. It's massive now. So that's an interesting story. Here's another interesting story. I found it interesting. It's in the Telegraph anyway. I'm not very animated this morning because I'm minding my voice. I hope you don't mind that. Might look like I'm a bit downbeat these last couple of days, but I've got to be very careful with my voice because it is. I've got that horrible soreness now. Banging a fucking microphone. I've got that soreness, that broken glass feeling when I swallow. Where was I? So you often hear about people talking about Agenda 20, Agenda 30. We often speak to guests who talk about human settlement zones. Okay? A world in which the population is reduced through a number of ways. The land is rendered unlivable, unfarmable, poisoned by fracking, by geoengineering, by wildfires. Okay, and people are pushed into cities, super cities, human settlement zones, right? I believe this, by the way. I believe this is an agenda and I've seen evidence of it. Excuse me, I see evidence of it all the time. And this just got me thinking this morning. It's a story in the Telegraph about student accommodation. So this is the University of West England. And students at the University of West England, or Western England, west of England, the University of the West of England, they've been complaining about these accommodation, these pods, these apartments that they're expected to live in. And I just find this very interesting indeed. They have a place called Purbeck Court. It's a site supposed to be temporary because there is a shortage of student accommodation in this particular university. You know, the halls of residence are packed to capacity. So they've had to find temporary accommodation. And what they've done is they've built 21 studio flats and they've made them tiny. Absolutely tiny. As you can see by that picture there. Like a shipping container. And some students are saying, holy Jesus, you can't expect us to spend a year or 2 years living in this tiny cramped space. It's very, very interesting this. I wonder, are the students being experimented upon? I'll tell you why, because look at it. Now I can't find the diagrams. I cannot find the diagrams. But I've read books over the years written by learned men and women, conspiracy researchers. And they've talked about apartments in skyscrapers in the near future in cities. And they've drawn the exterior of apartments just like this and the interior very much like what we've just seen there. And I wonder, it's a little bit of predictive programming maybe. Maybe that's the wrong term to use. Isn't that fascinating? The students are kicking off about it saying, what the bloody hell is this? But that's coming to a city near you in the very near future. Because remember, that's what the Extinction Rebellion maniacs, that's what they want to see. They want to see us living in much smaller accommodation, accepting that we have to give up our notions of what a house and a home is to save the planet. So this sort of stuff is popping up now. Very interesting. They built this stuff. And to be honest with you, it doesn't look very temporary to me. I don't know about you. Right? Get people used to the idea this is what's coming down the line. I don't know, maybe I'm talking through my arse. I do that sometimes, you know. Talk through my arse. Indeed you do, Richie. Indeed you do. What else have we got for you this morning? There's no room for a sense of humour anymore. Anywhere in life, in society. There's no room for satire. There is no room for sarcasm. And there is no room for sending up silly old tired stereotypes. Nobody's got a sense of humour. Divock Origi is a Liverpool player. He scored very important goals for Liverpool in their Champions League triumph last year, didn't he? Divock Origi, the bastard of fucking Liverpool, but anyway. But he's a very interesting player, is Divock. And Liverpool were playing in Genk in Belgium yesterday, and some of the Liverpool fans had a poster with which made reference to the gigantic appendage of Divock Origi. This is not new. United fans did this when Jesus Christ, why is my mind gone blank? Former Everton player, former West Brom player, played up front for United, Belgian as well. Why is my mind gone blank? What's wrong with me? Oh God, did you know this is the illness? And he was sold. You know what I'm talking about. The striker for United. Jesus, wept. Black as well. Good striker. And United fans were singing funny songs about the size of his tallywhacker. But it's been picked on again this morning by the media right across the board as evidence of racism. It's not, it's just funny. It's a very funny old stereotype. Is that black men have larger penises than white men. It's just a joke. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with any black dude any day of the week. The Pepsi challenge. And probably lose. But no room for it. Everything is racist. You see, we are, there's the picture. We are, this is early onset dementia, by the way. Why can I not think of the name of the Belgian lad who played for Man United, who's now playing for Juventus? Is it Juventus he's playing for? Is it? Holy shit, that's bad, isn't it? Has anybody told me? Because it's driving me mad. It's fucking driving me mad. Lukaku, thank you very much, Scotty. Romelu Lukaku, that's right, yeah. That's something to be worried about, that. Christ. Or maybe it's because I'm a racist bastard and I didn't remember his name because I'm a racist. That could be it. Name the black players in Manchester United, Richie. Well, Anthony Martial, Marcus Rashford, of course. Of course. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, of course. Yes, yes. Axel Tuanzebe, of course. Yes. Ashley Young, yes. You see, I'm not racist. You big Paulie Gammon racist bastard, you. It's not racist to make jokes about black guys having bigger penises. It's funny. I've seen those jokes before and black guys always laugh and black guys go, you better bloody believe it. It's just a gag, you know. You know, it's just a gag. Doesn't mean anything. But what it does is it implants in people. It plants a seed in people's minds. Just don't say anything anymore. Don't say fucking anything. It's not that conversations will take forever, which I've been talking about. Eventually people just won't say anything. Don't say anything. In case you're labelled a racist, you know. Did you say that? Did you really say that? Did you? I did. It's a joke. I know that black men's penises probably average out at probably around the average size of the white man's penis. Probably about 5.5 to 6 inches, probably. The average, maybe. I don't know. No big deal. It's just a funny old stereotype. We just laugh at stuff like that these days, don't we? Apparently not. Apparently there's no room for laughing anymore at anything. Yeah. Future Mrs. Allen says to me, this is true. Her name is Caroline Tisserand, by the way. A lot of people go looking for Caroline on Facebook. They find an account that is Caroline's and they send her friend requests. And then they come back to me and they say, your missus is one ignorant fucker, Richie. She hasn't responded to my friend request on Facebook. And I say, you're an ignorant fucker. She hasn't posted on Facebook in 4.5 years. She doesn't use it. There's an account there. And she's very private anyway. She doesn't even like me giving her the occasional mention. She's very private, Caroline. No interest in anybody knowing anything about her. A very private woman. So when you find her on Facebook and you jump in, I listen to your fella's radio show. There's nobody reading that. So don't get annoyed by it. She's not got some inflated opinion of herself. She just doesn't use Facebook. You'll see there hasn't been a post there for years. Okay? Donald Trump. So, she says to me, you've got to be careful, Richie. Speaking of self-censorship. And I said, why, future Mrs. Allen? That's how I refer to her. Future Mrs. Allen. I come downstairs from the studio after the show. Future Mrs. Allen, where's me tea? Future Mrs. Allen, did you hang the washing out? Future Mrs. Allen, did you put the bins out? Because I don't do any of that. Because I'm an unbelievable fucking diva. When you're a superstar DJ with a radio show with a big listenership, you shouldn't have to do anything. I don't wash a fucking cup in my house. So it's future Mrs. Allen. I don't care that she's worked 10 hours in her job. I don't care. I'm more important. Me. So the future Mrs. Allen says you got to be careful when you're, because you do these stories about identity politics, and sometimes you give the impression, sometimes you're on the case of women, she said. And I said, does it appear so? And she said, yes, it does appear so. And she says, you're doing yourself a disservice because you've always been very fair and you've always been a champion of women, particularly in broadcasting, which I have, but that doesn't matter because I'm not important. So women don't need me to champion them in broadcasting because I'm not very influential, is what I'm saying. But she said, you do these stories and then you laugh at yourself and call yourself misogynistic. She said, people might think you are. So the future Mrs. Allen won't be happy about this next story. She won't be happy about this next story. But it's an I told you story. It's an I told you story. It's an I told you story. Somebody's phoning me there now on the old dog and bone. They can fuck off. For now. Somebody resembling me, somebody with no hair, with bad teeth, and with an outrageous Irish accent, looking just like me, has been talking for many years about positive discrimination and where it ends up. Now, let me preface my remarks by saying this, and I am not virtue fucking signalling. I'm not trying to look like a nice guy, because I'm not a nice guy. How many times do I have to say that? Speak to the people who know me. There are 5 people in my life who actually know who I am. I am a bastard on a scale that you couldn't even imagine. Grumpy, curmudgeonly. Right? This is not, I'm not saying I told you so. So before you accuse me of being trying to curry favour, Zoe Ball is a talented broadcaster, a talented woman. As a radio connoisseur, I listen to radio and have been for my entire life. When I was younger, in my young days, which were difficult days, as I've touched on once or twice in the programme, and I want you to feel sorry for me now. Of course I don't want you to feel sorry. I don't feel sorry for myself. Very difficult times. Radio was a lifesaver for me growing up. Listening to offshore radio, AM radio, listening to FM radio, music, talk programmes. It was a great friend to me with my little transistor, and I love radio. And I still listen to pretty much everything. I'll listen to a bit of Radio 1, even though I can't stand the fucking music. Radio 2 I'll have on Heart, I'll have on a bit of LBC, which is talk. I listen to it all. It's obviously important for my own show, but I love radio. And Zoe was a talented woman, no doubt about it. But when Chris Evans left Radio 2 to go back to Virgin Radio, the BBC decided in their wokeness that it had to be a woman. It must be a woman. And in fact, right across our morning schedule, 2, 3, 4, 5 live, BBC 6, BBC Music, have more women. Zoe Ball and Joe Cox, I think, were the only people in the frame. Neither of them were suitable to present BBC Two breakfast. Zoe Ball was given it anyway because she's a woman. Number one, solely because she's a woman. Doesn't detract from the fact that she's a capable broadcaster, but because she's a woman. But her personality, her tendency to ladetteness, her tendency towards cliche, her tendency towards silly game playing meant that she was completely unfit to take over that breakfast programme. But it didn't matter. She's a woman, so she has to get the job. And it is dreadful. It is absolutely dreadful. The BBC did the same thing in the late afternoon to Simon Mayo, was it? Was it Simon Mayo? We've got to put more women on prime time. So they put Joe Wiley onto Simon Mayo's programme and absolutely fucking ruined the programme. To the point that Simon Mayo, with a massive audience, said, fuck this, not because he's a misogynist or because he hates women, but he said, you've just fucking ruined my programme. And off he went somewhere else. This is what happens. This is not saying that Zoe Ball nor women can present radio programmes. They do. And my favourite radio presenters of all time include people like Maria McCann in Waterford City, include people like Carrie Crowley, like Marion Finucane, a brilliant broadcaster, Victoria Derbyshire, who for years presented an amazing mid-morning radio show on BBC Radio 5 Live. Those women were outstanding. They earned the right to be there and they triumphed. But when you do this, you lose 1 million fucking listeners. 1 million listeners. Extraordinary stuff. And of course the BBC, rather than acknowledge that they've made a monumental fuck up in not finding the best person for the gig, are now blaming it on the fact that people are more into podcasts. That is horse shit. Horse shit. Terry Wogan had millions of listeners on BBC Radio 2, one of the greatest broadcasters of all time. He handed it over to Chris Evans. Evans was a smart man. He learned about Terry Wogan's audience. He looked at what was popular. He understood the dynamic of the programme and he understood what made those people who listened to it tick. Right? And he did well with it. The BBC threw Zoe Ball in there and Zoe Ball went back to the mid-1990s. Silly games. Referring to her audience as superheroes. Playing silly fucking childish games that would have been popular on radio back in the 1990s. Has destroyed the programme. Not because she's not capable, but because she's unfit. Lost 1 million listeners. I told you so. Future Mrs. Allen said to me yesterday, she said, when they announced Zoe Ball, Richie, you said they would lose 1.5 million to 2 million listeners in the first couple of years. I did. You see, the best football managers are often people who never played football themselves. I spent a good deal of my career coaching radio presenters and hearing confession sessions and helping radio presenters to make their programmes better. Not because I am a doyen of radio, not because I am an expert, not because I am a wonderful presenter. No, I know the fucking business inside out. Listening to Jerry Ryan, Finucane, Carrie Crowley, McCann, Derbyshire, Howard Stern. I know the business inside out. And I wouldn't have put Zoe Ball within 100 miles of Radio 2 breakfast. But she had to go in there. Because we had to put a woman in there. And we had to give her an enormous salary to show that we are woke. The BBC. There you are. Anyway. Good broadcaster. Zoe Ball will rise again somewhere else where she's suited. But not on that programme. We get this all the time. Lately, MPs, abuse, name calling, has to stop. The public, becoming more and more vitriolic. Dangerous time for MPs. Horrible time to be in public life. And then the Daily Mail gives a series of examples which are not dangerous, which are just people shouting abuse at MPs. not threatening to kill them, not posting their name, not posting their addresses and their phone numbers online, but just calling them names. Names. You fucking Egypt, you traitor, you bastard, you horrible person, you scumbag. Christ almighty, did he say the things I get called and I'm not important? Calling me a traitor. You must be fucking stupid. I'll get my violin. You think that crying about being called a backstabbing Tory traitor actually equates to fucking this country over by saving the Tories and their Brexit? You should be dragged out of the Labour Party and thrown into the gutter where you belong. That was said to Emma Lewell Buck. That's just the roly-poly and the rough and tumble of public life there. That's the sort of things that people say when they're pissed off. You can't legislate for that. You fucking bastard! What? What, you want to ban people from saying that? Tough shit, Paddy. Madness this, where it leads. Labour MP being told, you've just voted in concert with the most destructive right-wing government in our history. You've just spat in the face of my Polish neighbours. You must be so proud that you've supported the most divisive, nasty government since Margaret Thatcher. Shame on you. They're calling that trolling. That is a lucid and cogent fucking counter-argument to that which that MP stands for. John Mann was called names, told that he stands for nothing, told to fuck off, told to slither off to the House of Lords, called a disgusting snake. And they are categorising this as dangerous language, as evidence that these are dangerous times for members of Parliament. My God, huh? That's basic stuff, that, isn't it? Mann is a Zionist apologist. He's a pathological liar, John Mann, because he works day and night to convince us all that anti-Semitism is on the rise in England when it isn't. All the evidence points to the contrary. He's just a liar. Rotten piece of fucking human excrement, John Mann. Horrible human being. Take that. It's all you're getting. You're not going to get any more. I'm sure you can live with it. I'm sure your salary, your expenses, your big houses in the north and your big houses in London will comfort you when people are calling you names on Twitter. These are mad times. Kate Hoey as well. She's a committed Labour Brexiteer, called a snake in the swamp. One of the more printable comments. See where all this is going? You see where all this is going? You know? To shut down dissent. To shut it down completely. To criminalise dissent. To criminalise saying to people who are selling out their own constituents. To criminalise those constituents shouting at them on Twitter. Not shouting at them in the street, but shouting at them, you lousy bastard. They're going to criminalise that. Crazy times. Mad times. Mad times. There's very little, as I said, there's very little pushback against it. Very little opposition to it. It's just rushing in headlong. And everybody seems to be in favour of it. Right. Is there news before I go on the lorry in Essex, is there? Wouldn't appear to be at the moment. According to the BBC, they are still questioning the man who was driving that lorry allegedly. That's all really. They're questioning the man and they're trying to find out exactly where the lorry was, where it went, when the migrants got on there. And Mo Robinson, the man from Portadown, is still in custody, and that's about the size of it. Right, I'm going to do one. I'm going to love you and leave you. Sorry for not getting too much into the comments today. I am minding my voice, right? Because I do have a radio show to do later on. It's going to be difficult today, but I will do it voice-wise. So until later on today, it's a goodbye from me. Do enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll will speak on the radio show, which is on the usual channels at the usual time of 5 o'clock. Alrighty.